Alright, so we've completely implemented our design. We've hung all the lights, focused the lights, recorded our cues, we've got our cue sheets made, so what's the final result? Well, it's our finished show, and it's purposefully designed lighting that hopefully fulfills all the goals of the lighting designer that we talked about at the very beginning. Illuminate selectively, model the actors and the scenery, support the production concept, and we do all of that by manipulating those controllable qualities of light. Second, we've arrived at a set of individual lighting cues that, when played in sequence at their appropriate times, will take the audience on a journey through the production. And again, the final result is the experience of the audience upon watching the production for the first time. It's all about the experience of the audience when they go on that journey through the production for the first time. That is enabled largely by the lights moving from one scene to another. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the result of the design that we've created by looking at photos of this production of My Fair Lady. You still don't need to know the story of My Fair Lady, but the scenes in these photos might be a little more meaningful to you if you are familiar with the story. One thing about theatrical photography, lights generally don't show up well in photos, but if you're careful with your camera settings, you take a lot of pictures and then you enhance them slightly, you can get a pretty good idea of what the lights actually looked like in real life. So all the pictures we're going to look at now I took during dress rehearsal, and they've all been enhanced just a little bit, the brightness adjusted and the contrast, but other than that it's exactly what the camera saw. Alright, here's our first photo. This is Act 1, Scene 1, first scene of the show. It's 10 p.m., it's late evening, it's a cold March night, and it was recently rainy. One thing you'll notice, this picture, we've seen it before, we used it to talk about practical use. So a major part of the scene are, of course, our practical street lamps, and also that motivated light above that's creating that effect that you see actually below the light. So practicals and motivated lights. This is another photo of the exact same scene, same cue. How are we creating the rest of what's going on here? Well, we have light blue lights coming from the front with a little bit of pink. We have light blue coming from the side and above, and we have blue-green wash coming from the front and blue-green downlights coming from above and behind to help create that feeling that it was, kind of recent rain. So that's Act 1, Scene 1. Immediately following that, we have the song, Wouldn't It Be Loverly? This is cue 20, and basically what happens is the stage gets kind of more dreamy, it gets very blue, and the focus shifts to the center of the stage, and we've added pink spotlights on Eliza. When we move into cue 21, the music is building, the chorus enters, so the whole stage warms up. The pink across the front of the stage expands, and also we introduce pink in the backlights. So the backlights are a good way to kind of color tone the whole stage. Then we move on to cue 22. This is right after the previous cue. The choir has exited, and we're basically restoring cue 20. So we're restoring that blue look that we saw before. So we take cue 20, we copy it, we record it as cue 22, and this is actually midway through the lights fading out. So the follow spots have faded out, and the lights right here are in the process of fading to black. Next we've got Act 1, Scene 2. This is the tenement scene. This is actually the same exact lighting look as in Covent Garden, but it doesn't have quite the same effect in this particular scene. In my opinion, because of the scenery, this was a scene that we just didn't quite achieve exactly what we were going for scenically. I felt like there could have been more done with it,
and scenery and lighting do complement each other. So even if you have the exact same lighting look in two different scenes, it may not have exactly the same effect. Another thing about this scene is that it may look like they're in the same place, but we've actually relocated the street lamps for this scene, and we'll actually relocate them for other scenes as well. So there's actually a different motivated light for each of these street lamps than in the other scene, or than in all the other scenes in which they're used. Every time they're in a different location, we need a different motivated light. This is Act 1, Scene 3. This is Higgins' study. Don't really have to talk about this photo too much because we've actually seen how the lights are, how a cue is built. When we were looking at how a cue is built, we were looking at this particular scene right here. So we've actually already talked about all the lights that make up this particular lighting look right here. And just to reiterate, this is daytime. The primary source of light are those practicals and possibly some diffused sunlight maybe coming in through some windows. But otherwise it's just, our front, side, back lighting, and then specials on the chair and the desk and the couch. This is another photo of the exact same cue. One thing that I might have done with this scene, or with the study in general, was to maybe make the motivated effect of this practical maybe a little bit more pronounced. This is the motivated light from that practical. It's being created by a light up here. One thing that maybe could have done with this to make it a little more realistic was cause this motivated light to have maybe more of an effect on the wall itself, just to make it maybe look a little more realistic, like the light was actually coming from that lamp, maybe a little more than it does in this particular case. This is Q70, still basically the same lighting look, except now we've added the library. One thing about the lights in the library, all the lights lighting the library are closer to the library than those lighting the study. So the lights in the study, are way up here, but the ones in the library are much, much closer to what they're lighting. Another thing about the lights for the library are the angle of the lights for the library. The angle is much shallower, or more shallow than the lights down in the rest of the study, and also the lights that are being used for backlight and also for the high side light. Those are all par fixtures, which are all different than the lights used in the rest of the study. The rest of the study, the backlights are strip lights, and the high side lights are ellipsoidals. So a lot of things kind of different going on in the library that we had to take into account and think about when we were focusing and when we were building that impacted how we were building those cues. This is Act 1, Scene 5, Just You Wait. Eliza's expressing her anger and her frustration with Higgins. And here pretty much we just have a special on the chair, spotlights in lavender and amber. But the rest of the way the study is lit is consistent with what we've seen already. As the energy in the song builds towards the end, we go to this, 73.4. Basically the stage warms, the pink front lights and back lights are brought in. One thing you'll notice about here, is that the difference in how this wall is lit and that wall is lit. And the reason for that is the follow spots at Norwich High School are pretty much level with the stage. So there's hardly any angle at all between the follow spots and the stage. So the follow spot that's lighting Eliza is also washing out all the scenery behind her. Ideally, you want your follow spots to be coming at some sort of angle so that all the extra light is actually hitting the floor and not washing out all the scenery behind the character. That's just something that we have to deal with at Norwich High School. There's just really not much of a way around it. So you'll notice that in some of the other photos that we look at, that there's a bright area behind someone who's being followed with a spotlight. This is Act 1, Scene 5. This is later in the evening. Now the source of light is much more from just the practicals. This is being created with blue and lavender front lights, blue and amber side lights, but in both of those cases, the blue is the color that's dominating, and also a dark blue wash from the front and dark blue backlights. Plus all the same elements as before, specials on chair, desk, couch, on where Eliza is sitting. This next photo is actually the exact same lighting look. It's still Q75, but you kind of get a better idea how the sources of light are trying to be represented here. It looks as if the characters are actually being lit by the appropriate source of light. Eliza is being lit by both this source of light and this source of light. Next we have The Rain in Spain, Act 1, Scene 5. This is right at the beginning of the song. The intensity and the warmth are building, where we've introduced spotlights in lavender. And in this particular case, because we only have 2 spotlights, the follow spots have to split between the characters. So they would spot the characters like this, half and half, to try and actually spot all 3 characters using only 2 beams of light. And if you only have 2 follow spots, that's the way we do it in a scene like this. And fortunately, throughout most of this song, the 3 characters are close enough to each other that we can do that. If at any point they break off, then maybe one spot can stay with 2 people, the other one can stay with 1 person, or if they all 3 go different directions, then we just have to pick the 2 that we want to highlight the most. But that's how we would follow spot people in a situation where we don't have enough follow spots. So basically, what's going on in this photo is we're in a song now, just like you've seen in some previous photos. When we're in a song, when we're in a musical part of the show, the lighting is more about reflecting the energy and the mood of the music and whatever they're singing about. And when we're not in a song or we're not in a musical section, the lighting is kind of more realistic. So we go from this is right after the end of the music. Right at the end of the music, there's a final beat, and the 3 characters land in this couch. They all sit down right at the last beat of the music. So the lights do a fast bump right as the music ends back into the realistic light. So it's in that bright warm light for the actual song, and then right at the end there, it snaps back into reality. Next we have I Could Have Danced All Night. Basically the lights become more dreamy, more strictly blue. Again, we have Eliza in a special sitting in the chair, also with blue and lavender in the spotlights. This is right shortly after that. She's moved over to the couch. So same lighting as in the previous photo, except now the special is on the couch. So in a scene like this, or in a lot of scenes, a lot of different kinds of shows, we have the basic lighting established in the scene, but then at the same time we're also following the character around with specials. So first we have a special on Eliza here, and then she might move downstage, so we have a special on her there, and then she might move over to the couch, and we have a special on her there. So depending on how much you want to highlight a character as they move around, you can very quickly accumulate a lot of cues by trying to do that. So in this case, we didn't do too much of that, but she did move she did sit at the chair for a little bit and sing some lines, and then she moved over here. So that isn't too many cues. It's just one transition from one place to another. This is Act 1, Scene 7. This is Ascot. It's at the horse races. It's a July afternoon. It's bright and warm. This look is being created with pink and amber from the front, with a little bit of blue. The side lights are amber and blue, but they're balanced. They're about the same intensity. And then we're using pink and amber backlights. And one thing you see here, the way we're lighting the backdrop, the way that these clouds are lit and this awning is lit, this backdrop is actually being backlighted. There are lights behind the drop, lighting it from behind, and that's what's lighting it that way. So just looking at this scene now, and even during the show, I think we probably could have put a little more light on the backdrop from the front, just to help reinforce the impression that sunlight is what is lighting all these characters, and is also lighting the setting behind them. So maybe we could have put a little more front light on the backdrop back there. One thing strikes me about this photo is that it feels a little bit too warm, a little too amber. The intensity is good, but maybe a little too amber, and part of that effect might be just because of how prevalent the stage floor is in this particular picture. At Norwich High School, the floor is this light-colored wood, and it's very glossy, which is really not the kind of floor you want for theater. You want black and not glossy at all, very flat finish, so that you don't have basically a mirror on the floor. You don't have all this light reflecting off the floor, and it can be very distracting, especially if the audience can see the floor from where they're sitting. This next cue, same lighting, except we've brought the focus into the center. There's a special on the center of the stage here. And then the characters move upstage to the table. So again, focus moves upstage to the center, and there's a special on the table. Next, this is Act 1, Scene 9. Higgins and Eliza are getting ready to go to the ball. So just pretty much a standard evening look. It's subtly different, but pretty much just an evening look in the study. But in this case, there's the orchestra is playing under the action, so we're actually following Higgins and Eliza with follow spots as they get ready to leave, and then as they leave, and then the follow spots actually split off and help the scene transition to the next scene. Okay, so this is the Embassy Waltz. This is actually at the ball. It's supposed to look like it's lit by, bright, warm chandeliers. It's very formal and stately. We have primarily pink and blue front lights, relatively bright, and they're also at the same intensity as each other, so they're relatively white. They're mixing to be fairly white. The side lights are also balanced, amber and blue, so they're mixing to be fairly white. The backlights are also pink and blue, and they're mixing relatively balanced, mixing to be relatively white. So the scene is relatively white and relatively bright. And we're also using lavender spotlights throughout the entire scene so that we can subtly highlight the characters we want to, amongst all the action that's going on. A couple things about the backdrop in this scene as well. Again, this is backlighting. We needed to continue the backlighting all the way to the edge of the drop, and that's just something that we never got to because the strip lights didn't go that far. And again, I think we probably could have had a little more front light on the backdrop just to help reinforce the brightness of the scene by making the backdrop a little bit brighter from the front. But other than that, I think that this worked really well. Nice, bright, relatively white light. This is after the ball, so basically it's the same look as before the ball. It's 3 a.m. The only thing about this, Higgins is basically basking in the glory of how successful the evening was, and Eliza is kind of forgotten during the song. So maybe one thing we could have done in this scene is maybe highlight Eliza a little bit more so the audience might have been a little more aware that she was being left out. In this next photo, this is after that song. Higgins is starting to realize how left out she was, and they're confronting that now. But otherwise, there isn't really anything particularly new lighting-wise going on in this scene. It's just, again, it's you get that nice apparent feeling of where the light is supposed to be coming from, and an appropriate intensity for the mood and what's going on in this scene. This is the reprise of Just You Wait. It's a very short reprise, so again we're bringing the focus in on the chair. In this case, we actually decided not to use the spotlights at all, just because it was such a short moment. I didn't want that distracting overwash on the walls behind her. And again, just nice, appropriate intensity, appropriate focus for this, this short moment here, and then the lights fade out. Okay, this is Act 2, Scene 2. This is the reprise of On the Street Where You Live. So this is the middle of the night. Our street lamps are our primary source of light, again with our motivated light, and there's another street lamp over there, stage left. How are we doing this? We've got blue front lights, no pink front light at all, just a tiny little bit of amber, blue wash from the front, and blue backlights, and also lavender spotlight on Freddy. Another thing that you see here is we've got practicals on the house itself, but there's no motivated light here at all, just because it's just didn't decide to include one. We could have included motivated lights for both of these, but they're kind of in a very awkward position in this corner here, so we just didn't include motivated lights for those two. I think this scene is in general a good example of how the scenery can complement the lighting. The scenery can work with the lighting, to create the environment, the street scene that we're trying to create here. This photo is the exact same lighting as the previous photo, except now Eliza has entered and we've picked up both the characters in the follow spots. Alright, this is Act 2, Scene 3. This is the reprise of Wouldn't It Be Loverly. It's 5 a.m. The street lamps are what's lighting the scene. 5 a.m., but the sun is just getting ready to rise, or is just rising. Here we've got our smudge pot effect, working quite well to make it feel like there's actually a fire inside this smudge pot here. It's kind of ironic because we actually almost didn't even bother doing this effect, partly because we were running out of time, and also because there's a white ceiling right above all these characters, so we had to be careful with the intensity of that light so that we didn't create this huge distracting orange circle on the ceiling above the stage. But otherwise we've got blue front lights with a little bit of pink and amber going on here, blue wash, blue and pink backlights. There's no special on these characters at all. This is just the acting area lights. Then Eliza enters and she sits and sings by herself. So here we've got same lights as before, except now we've got a lavender spotlight on Eliza. This is shortly after that. Eliza moves across the stage. One thing I'll just briefly mention here, since I never did talk about it, how did we actually create this, or make the street lamps look this way? There's actually just a regular light bulb inside there, and it has an amber gel wrapped around it. So the amber gel is creating the color we want, and then the very outer layer of the street lamp is a clear diffusion gel. So the colored light is being diffused as it comes out of that street lamp. So that's how we actually made it look that way. There's two different gels being used there, and just a regular or just a standard light bulb. Another thing about this moment is that this is actually the beginning of a very slow sunrise cue. This scene started 5 a.m., but it's building toward a song, Get Me to the Church on Time, that should take place when it's brighter, a little bit more, toward morning, to the sun being actually risen. So this moment here is the start of a minute 30 slow cue of sunrise. And this is toward the end of that cue, when the song is actually starting. So we've added in our lavender and amber spotlights on Doolittle, and we're pretty much almost to the full intensity of that slow cue. And here is actually in the middle of that song. So again here, this was just, this is the tenement scene, the tenement scenery. This was just a particular scene that I felt like we weren't quite done with the scenery. We didn't quite achieve what we wanted to. So I felt like that distracted from the lighting a little bit in this scene. But otherwise I felt like this looked pretty good. Unfortunately, we are getting that follow spot overwash, but nothing we can do about that. Some things we just can't do anything about. This is Act 2, Scene 4. Again, Higgins study. Nothing particularly new here, but this was intended to feel more like maybe sunlight coming through the windows, even though we are still using the practicals, so maybe a little less dependent on the practicals in this particular scene. But that may not register very well in this particular photo. It might have been something that would have been more apparent actually watching the show. This is Act 2, Scene 5. This is the garden of Mrs. Higgins. It's around 11 a.m., sunbathing the garden. It's reasonably warm. Maybe there's a light breeze. The sky is blue and cloudy. So some things about this. We've got a painted scenery here depicting basically the weather and what time of day it is, so we need to make sure the lighting is kind of consistent with that. Another thing about this is that this scene is played very far downstage. The front of the stage is right here. So that has a lot of implications in terms of how we circuit and patch everything. What dimmers we plug lights into and what channels we control those dimmers with, because we only need to light downstage. So if I take my downstage side light and I circuit it with all the other side lights up the rest of the stage, then I'm not going to be able to turn on just this downstage one for this scene. So I have to think about that kind of thing ahead of time. Or that was something that we had to consider when we were building the light plot, knowing that we needed to be able to only light this downstage area. This scene is lit with pink, blue, and amber front lights in decreasing intensity. So pink is the brightest, and then blue, and then a little bit of amber. Amber side lights to kind of create that feeling of sunlight. And also pink and amber backlights. This is basically the exact same cue. This is the song Without You, except now we've actually added in our lavender spotlights because we're into a song and we want to highlight the main characters a little better. This is Act 2, Scene 6. I've grown accustomed to her face. This is dusk. This is similar to a previous scene in the show that we actually didn't look at when Freddy first visits the house here, so the look is kind of similar to that point in the show. The mood is supposed to be, kind of contemplative and tense, but also kind of dreamy and longing. We're lighting this front lights in blue and pink, dark blue wash, and also amber side lights, blue and amber side lights, and the amber is about half the intensity of the blue, so the blue is dominating, and also blue and pink backlights, and our spotlights are also in blue and pink. Again, you're seeing the effect of that overwash, especially on the house there. But in this particular venue, we can't do anything about that. Next photo is exact same cue, except now we're focused on the steps right at the end of the song here, and then we actually do a 2-step fade out. So basically, before the lights go to black, they actually kind of fade so that the whole house front is a dark blue. So that dark blue fade happens right as Higgins walks through the door, and then it immediately automatically followed to a blackout. So you can kind of create effects just by rather than doing something all in one step, breaking it into a couple steps. Well, let's make our first step, let's tone this whole scenery blue, and our second step is actual blackout. Act 2, Scene 7, this is the last scene of the show, immediately following the previous photo. So it's just after dusk. There's an especially soft glow throughout the study. It's very different from any other time during the show, and that's important because it's this very important scene right at the end of the show. We don't want it to look like all the other scenes that have taken place in the study. We have our blue and lavender front lights, blue side lights, but they're all very low in intensity. What's also our blue backlights, but very low in intensity. What's really lighting this scene are the specials on Higgins and Eliza, the practicals and their motivated lights, and that's pretty much it. That's where we're getting most of the. That's how we're creating the focus, and it's all the rest of the lights at low intensity that's kind of creating that mood and anchoring all these other lights. And again, at the end of this scene, we did a multi-step fade out. So from this cue right here, we faded to a cue that had only the specials in it, and then to a blackout cue. So, there may have even been one more cue in there. I'm not sure, but it was a multi-step fade out. So the whole scene might have gotten a little darker, and the specials stayed at the same intensity, and then everything faded out except the specials, and then the specials faded out. So kind of that multi-step fade out at just the proper times to create that last moment of the show. Okay, so that is those are all the photos from the show from start to finish. So now we'll just go over a few final comments about everything that we've just seen. First, flexibility is built into the lighting plot. It's used to create every single look of the production. That lighting plot that we created, we used that one lighting plot to create every single different look that we saw in all those photos that we just looked at. Second, lighting, scenery, and costumes all complement each other. So proper attention must be given to all of them to maximize the visual impact of the production. Lighting, scenery, costumes, makeup, all the visual aspects of the show have the potential to complement or harm each other. So really, attention just has to be given to all of them. Third, the circumstances of a production, budget, schedule, venue, how tasks are delegated, all sorts of things. Those circumstances influence the quality of the final result. Fourth, a production is constantly evolving, and no one way is the right way. It's constantly evolving because it's as we've seen, it's a very long process, and the process is constantly changing. So, and also there's just no one right way to put on a show or design a show. Every single designer is going to have a different approach. So all the photos you just saw would be different if a different designer did the show, or if some of the circumstances of the production were different. We were working with a longer schedule, we had more people to do certain jobs, things like that. All of those things will affect how the show turns out. Alright, but what's really important is that we've put on a successful production. And for our production of My Fair Lady, the audience really enjoyed the show. We had lots of positive comments from both the audience and other people involved in theater that came to see the show. Could the show have been better under more ideal conditions? Sure, but that's true of pretty much any show at any level. It just depends on what ideal you're striving for. But in general, we had a very successful production. We achieved everything that we set out to do in terms of the design, in terms of pretty much every aspect of the show. So we've gone through everything we wanted to talk about. We talked about what lighting design is. We talked about how that design is documented. We started to get into My Fair Lady, talk about how the script is analyzed, how the set plays into that, how design decisions are made, how we actually learn how to design lights, and then the big one, what process do we follow to get from that script to our design documentation to that light plot, and then how do we implement it, how do we hang it, focus it, how do we record the cues, how do we run it during the show, and then now we've finally talked about what is the final result, and it's all about the experience of the audience, that journey they go on when they come and see the show for the first time. Okay, so we've reached the end of this whole sequence of videos. If you're looking for more information about lighting design or theater, if you've come this far and you're still looking for information, awesome. Here are some places you can get it. A couple books. Gillette's Designing with Light, we referenced that during the video some, and Pilbro's Stage Lighting Design. Some websites here, northern.edu. This is a lighting professor at Northern who has a bunch of information online. ETC, Altman, Roscoe, these are all lighting companies. Control Booth is an online forum for connecting basically high school and community theater to working professionals. BMI Supply, Theater Supply Company. So if you're looking for more information, you can go to any of those places. I know that this set of videos has been very intensive and very comprehensive, but I hopefully have achieved my goal if you made it all the way to the end, which was to provide you with a comprehensive overview of the process of lighting a show. Again, there isn't necessarily one set approach to lighting design. Like pretty much any other art, it's very subjective. So any two people doing exactly the same show are going to have very different interpretations and very different final results. Hopefully, I've shown you how things are generally done throughout the process, and also given you some concept of how professional environment differs from school and community environments. And finally, just please remember that this was intended to be more of a conceptual overview, so there might be very specific technical details that I touched on that may not have been presented accurately. I wouldn't be surprised if a theater or a lighting professional was not entirely satisfied with some aspect of something I said or showed you. But regardless of that, conceptual overview of the process. So thank you for watching, and feel free to contact me with questions or comments about this video or lighting design or anything that's been covered.